Perfect. So we're good. Okay. Thank you guys for coming and joining us for this session, and thank you, Debadutta, for taking out time from a busy schedule and having this session with us.
Pleasure.
I think just to set the context before we move on to the Q&A. So I have a set of questions that were submitted by potential students, aspirants, folks who are thinking about entrepreneurship. So we'll take those questions one by one under the segments of idea validation, scaling up, and funding. Most of the questions you will be answering, so I'll be just sort of listening in, and wherever need be, I'll sort of jump in and pitch in at that point in time. But just to, I think, for you also to sort of know what we're trying to do with UpGrad for this particular program, which is Startup with UpGrad, which is a 4-month-long entrepreneurship bootcamp that we have created. The objective of the entire program is to provide clarity of thought for a aspiring entrepreneur as they go through the entrepreneurial journey, be it in terms of idea validation, how to think of team, trying to sort of bring those learning. And as part of that, we have interviewed you also earlier. So trying to sort of bring in the learnings from 40 plus entrepreneurs into the platform itself, bringing in the best of class faculty members, because I think entrepreneurship cannot be taught, but the one thing that we can do potentially well is providing clarity of thought. And that's broadly, guys, the objective of the program is. So if you have any questions, you have your buddies, your sort of counselors who you can reach out to. Now, we'll start with a set of questions.
Sure.
These are interesting questions that have come to us, and I'll pick that one by one for each one of them. Guys, so the way we will go about doing this particular question, we have a live session going on, so on the screen we can see the live questions. But I'll pick up certain questions which are pre-populated for us.
Okay.
Students who had just submitted the questions earlier. We'll pick up those questions, and probably one by one, as the live sessions come, questions come up, we can take that up also. Guys, just one request, all those questions, if you can keep it as broad about entrepreneurship as possible, rather than making it very specific to your business idea, that would be useful for the general audience perspective. So just picking up a few questions, Debadutta, already before we pick up some questions, can we just hear your story? How did you come with the idea of Timesaverz, and what was the thought behind that?
Sure.
And what are you guys doing currently in the market?
Yeah. So Timesaverz, very simply put, is India's first on-demand home services market. We started in 2013 when nobody ever thought that, like services can be online. At that point in time, it was all about commerce being online.
Yeah.
So that was a huge risk that we took, my partner and us. Today, from just about 2 hubs that we started off in Juhu and in Goregaon, we are across 7 cities from just about 2 services that are the most low-hanging ones, which is handyman services and the repairs. We have gone on to do things like even at-home beauty services. So the portfolio today consists of close to around 7 services, and probably the only company in the home services segment that would be ROI positive on 2 out of the 6 categories that we are working on.
Yeah.
So the journey has been interesting, challenging, at times frustrating, but overall good.
No, so I just downloaded the Timesaverz app, and I was one of the first ones to tell you what are the challenges that I'm facing on those. But I think as an entrepreneur, you always have something or other going on. Your life is never settled at any point in time.
And there are more things going wrong than right.
Yeah, obviously. There are more things going wrong than right. Yeah. This room that you see, that's the room that we use for our home beauty.
Yes, at-home beauty services. We were there for the whole day.
So we had sort of people coming in enjoying this. I think what would be interesting for these questions, Debadutta, is if I can relate it back to your experience and then give the individual folks a clarity of thought as to how should they think about it. I think I'll start with idea validation. So guys, keep on sending your questions. You can see it on the screen, although I cannot see it because it's low resolution. So you will have to probably copy paste into a higher thing. But I'll start with certain questions on idea validation. The first thing that everyone asks us is, how did the idea come to you at the first place itself?
Yeah, I think this nothing different from what happens with most of the startup journeys. It was definitely a personal experience. The personal experience of a working mom who was spending 20 days in a month out of the home city, that is Bombay, with a 7-year kid at home. So most of the things used to relegate it over the weekend to get the home chores done. And if I were to look into a trigger point, it was like over a weekend, which normally is dedicated to my son. That time he was just about 7 years old. And I waited for a plumber to come into the house. Like it was like from Saturday morning till about Sunday evening, I was just waiting for that plumber to come in and get things done. He ultimately arrived on a Sunday, but without tools. And I felt so damn irritated and more than that guilty about, like wasting my time after a plumber and not being able to dedicate time for my son. At that point in time, just started thinking, why is it that, like when we can order everything online today, from cars to grocery to everything else, why not home services?
Yeah.
One thing led to another, and then Lavnish, who's the co-founder, we were on a business trip, and then we started thinking about it a little bit, and then we just thought, yes, this is something that we would look into it. No, so personal experience is all fine, man, but like there has to be a business validation to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the word there is a need is so overused and abused in that sense that everybody thinks that everything that I'm thinking about is a need in the market that can be actually satisfied by getting into a startup or starting a startup. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
In our case, we took almost 6 months to just look into it. Yes, it is a personal experience. It may solve a lot of issues that working men and women in metros may have in terms of getting the secured and trained people into their home for home services. But then we started looking into, is there a market for it?
A viable business idea.
Yes.
To do that.
If yes, then how big is it?
Yeah.
Is it even worth leaving a comfortable, cushy job to just get into it and start working on it? And the third thing that really excited us all about, which I started with, is it was a first in India. I think that very concept of being the first home services market in India was a great enough, I would say, and great enough excitement and a great enough reason for us to just plunge into the entrepreneurship part of it.
Yeah.
So I keep on saying to people who want to take the plunge into entrepreneurship, find out if there is a need. It has to be a genuine need.
Yeah.
Then it has to have a market, and third, it should be good enough for you to persevere. Because startup journey is not an easy journey.
It's not an easy journey.
It's not at all an easy journey. So that's very important to actually keep in mind while looking into it.
I think all three things that you mentioned are absolutely fair, because a lot of entrepreneurs that at least we have met, they have always come down and said that it's a personal pain point that I face.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have there's an interesting thing that we've done in our program, which is where we say we all love you pressing the bubble wrap, right? I mean, everyone loves pressing the bubble wrap. Right? My kid loves pressing the bubble wrap, and there's a need to press bubble wrap. But I think what you said as a second point is that a business case behind it is equally important for not to be missed out. That even if there is a need, there is a fundamental enjoyment and pain point. Can it be monetized? Can it be differentiated? Becomes absolutely relevant even when someone is not starting up. And I think a lot of people ultimately come to an idea stage and then they pause there. They say, okay, ठीक है, idea आ गया, अब तो market बनाना है, बन जाएगा. Without actually going into.
No, it's very important. I think in our case, what we did, and if it helps, before even plunging into it, did a lot of online research. We actually took a lot of online feedback from potential customers. We met close to around 100 people to talk about it, whether this would in any which way make a change in their lives. Because at the end of the day, business should make a change in your life. As we said, like Lavnish and I have a very famous saying saying that we are mad people. At a time when nobody was thinking about e-services, we jumped into it. But that mad is not about the temperament of being mad, but it is about making a difference. Any business that you start needs to start creating that difference in your lives. And that's when it validates itself.
So Vikram and Naresh, I hope that provide you with some answer to your question that you had asked. I'll just take up one question parallel to that, because a lot of people say, I have an idea, and they pause at that point in time. And I think you are raising the point that, look, even if you have an idea, do a thorough research of the market. How did you come to know that this will work? I think you mentioned that you went out and spoke to a few people, but what's a quick, dirty way of a potential?
No, so online research, talking to friends and family is all fine, but we did start with a very, I don't know if that could be even called a minimum viable product as
You
it's
had
put
a minimum
across
viable
in a
product.
business environment, but we had a website that looked like a vomit of services.
Yeah.
But then we
Sure.
did put it up, and then we started looking into whether people are even looking at taking up services through online.
Yeah.
We went through that process for 1.5 months, and in that 1.5 months we realized that, like, from all the things that we had put out there, they're just about this 5 or 6 things that people are looking forward to.
Yeah.
So a lot of research. I think this is something that people tend to overlook, which is like very data driven. Even if the data is small, you don't have to look into big data right from the beginning. Even if the data is small,
Even 5 people, 10 people,
yeah,
30
you
people.
need to understand from them as to what
Yeah.
is it. Like, I always give anecdotes, right? In our case, huge blunder that we did, and this was based on online research. People said, like, this whole hassle of getting home services organized, if we can actually get into an AMC kind of a mode where a company can just take into
Long-term
everything
subscription,
over
yeah.
a subscription, and we started with subscription.
Yeah.
We, at some point in time, we put a rational mind behind and went into subscription, little realizing that, like, the customers need to actually test out your product.
And they may not need subscription right
Yeah,
now.
and they need to actually at least test you
Yeah.
out once before even they make that decision to go in for a subscription package. So it has to be a combination of whatever you do in terms of research plus a practical approach to it in terms of testing out things on ground.
And just on that, I think a lot of focus is always there on just sort of testing out the idea as a
Yeah.
consumer research. People say that, look, go out and talk to 30
Yeah.
people and you will get some idea to it. And I always feel that even when you get and talk to 30 people, the challenge that you face there is that 30 people from an intuitive perspective may say, yes, this is a great idea. But when it comes to paying the money,
Yeah,
they all sort of fall back.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why, even when you said that I did a MVP with a product and a website, at least you tested out whether people will pay online for the service or not. Because I think in India, a brilliant funnel can be drawn. People are interested. These many people are liking the product. These many people take up the product. I think the biggest dropout happens. You take out the wallet to pay for the product.
For it. And at times we make this mistake of thinking that because we have spoken to family and friends and they are our test market and they are really ungo about it, so we really need to go about it. That doesn't work out at all.
That's a good point.
I think it needs to be externally tested to find out what is a viability.
Yeah. No, fair point. I think Ankit Gupta had a question on the similar lines. So I think I hope this gives him some clarity on that. Test out your product, go out to the market, get some secondary research, online research done, but talk to end consumers.
Yes.
Do not stop at talking to the end consumers. Build a minimal viable product and take it out.
Yeah.
Best thing would be if someone can pay you for that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good validation for you to sort of go out and take the plunge at the end of the day or not. I know that you were working prior to this. When you decide to quit your job and why you decide to quit the job, a lot of folks who come to our program are working professionals.
Okay.
Our internal success metric is how many of them quit their jobs at the end of the program and start something of their own. First started with UpGrad program. So just would love to hear a story as to when you decide to quit your job and how should an aspiring entrepreneur think about jobs and then sort of quitting it later.
Yeah, there's no moonlighting in this.
No moonlighting. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Because you need to be 24/7 right from day one. So either you are in it.
It's like your early days motherhood.
Yeah. So either you are in it or you just aren't there. So we have come across numerous cases where half day at the office, half day at work. It just doesn't work. You need to give it that kind of an importance. If it is life changing for you, then you need to invest that much time in it. So you need to make a choice whether this is something that is going to define your life or is it something that you just want to do for the fad of it. If you are doing it for the fad of it, stay away.
Yeah.
But if
because 10 people are doing it, you don't need to do it.
Yeah, but if you are into it, be there right from day one. So it was a difficult decision. Not that, as I mentioned, it was on a flight, my business partner, and I started speaking about it. At that point in time, we were working in the same organization. And by the time we came back, we had decided. But then family needed to be told about it.
You decided on the flight.
Yeah, we decided on the flight that this is what we are going to do.
Yeah.
And before even we landed, we had a little bit of a business plan in place.
Yeah.
It's another matter that business plan changes every second day.
Yeah.
But we had something in mind that this is what we are going after. It took some time just to make yourself comfortable with the idea that you are not going to get that paycheck that you get at the end of the month.
Yeah.
That you have a growing up boy whose needs would only
Further
increase
yeah.
as you move on. And in my case, especially because my husband himself is an entrepreneur by himself, that was a challenging thing. So do both of us jump into it, or do I take it a little longer? I think we planned it out.
Yeah.
We planned it out, and same happened with my co-founder. Once we made up our mind, we also took it to the kind of a thing that I quit first, and then he stayed on to with that organization to do the proper transition and then move out. But once we came in, there has been no going back. Yeah.
No, so at that point in time, you did not have customers.
Yeah.
You did not have revenue.
Sure.
Was it more what you went out in the market, gathered the input, or was it that just one flight ticket or a flight journey that made you realize that, look, let's just do it and let's leave everything? Like, because there's a question that Santosh asked, I'll just read it out for you.
Yeah.
He said, he's working. What should be the deciding factor, be it customers or revenue, to take the plunge to quit the job and do the venture? I think what you're saying is you need to have the conviction.
Conviction is must, but test it out before you really want to go about it. And testing doesn't mean talking to 10 different family, friends, and members. It needs to be properly validated before you just.
And that's where you took the MVP out in the market and sort of spoke to some people before you put on the resignation letter.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. And I'll just take a follow-up question from Santosh itself is, as an entrepreneur, this is a question Darpan asked, you have a lot of distraction. I think work is a distraction. Some people I have 3 ideas.
Yeah.
I will figure out one idea and I'll work with this. But I don't know which of these 3 ideas I should pick up.
Yeah.
How important is focus?
Very important.
And
very important. Because you can't be actually in 3 different places at the same time.
What did you guys start with as a first service, which was a vomit of everything on the website?
It was handyman services, actually.
Yeah.
Because that's a low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
And also because, like it was a plumber who didn't reach on time. Maybe that also guided the whole thing. But we just thought that that's the most...
easiest thing to start off with.
Not the easiest. It was the most difficult. But that's the most important thing that anybody is looking out for today.
And if that works, others will work.
Others would work out.
Yeah.
I think that's why we started with the handyman services.
I think it's an important one that you're making here, because even when someone starts, it becomes very attractive for you to start with 5 different things.
Yeah.
Agar ye nahi chalega, to ye to chalega. If this doesn't work, then this will work. One of these 5 will work. I have 20% chance of success.
Yeah.
Even if one works, I know how to get it done. But I think in the entire scheme of things, our brain is a limiting factor. Our time is a limiting factor. And within that time, if we do not have focus, I will give out really bad time to those 5 initiatives. If I would have rather focused on one, I know that I would sort of go all out and sort of get
so
it done.
even like Mayank, Santosh, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if Santosh's question is more about 5 different ideas or about actually within the same idea looking at 5 different things.
His question is even to start with is 5 different ideas and which one to take.
You need to narrow down. But if we were to, within the same idea, you want to pivot as much as you can.
As much as you can, and as fast as you can.
As fast as you can. But you can't be running with 5 ideas. Once you have honed on it, do multiple pivots. And that should not be a restriction.
And that's a very counterintuitive point to what business education teaches you, which teaches you that have a portfolio of product, run with it, and sort of figure out which one works. And the one that doesn't work will become a dog, the one that works will become a cash cow, etc.
Yeah.
But in entrepreneurship, when you're starting early stage, it is about focusing on one thing and ensuring that works really, really well.
And it also has to do with the resources, right? Resources not only in terms of money, which is the biggest thing, but resources in terms of people.
Your bandwidth.
You don't have that many people to actually focus on multiple things in the initial stages of your startup or a bootstrapped environment. So you need to figure out what is it that you really need to focus and grow on.
No, agreed completely. And that leads me to another question which Dupesh, Rakesh and Amit had asked. early stage, zero money, less
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
just a crazy idea. How do you get your initial set of team members? And there's always chicken and egg, right? I mean, you need the revenues to get the team members,
Yeah.
but you need the team members to get the revenue. What brings the initial set of people
The
together?
initial, I think it's the belief,
It's a
nothing
belief.
else, but the belief that you're going to do something together to create a change. But I think it's very important to know that whoever you are getting around the table, you know that their expectations out of this is what. It may be a case that somebody is looking at joining you
Yeah.
immediately, but then looking at some kind of a thing in another 1 year, 2 years, and stuff like that. You need to keep that in your mind
Yeah.
when you're getting the team together. But initially, it is all about the belief and trying to
Yeah.
get
This is
together.
something that we keep on discussing, and we keep on saying that people always think the following are their currencies. They have a currency of money.
Yeah.
They have a currency of ESOPs, which people say that, look, this is important for me to give
Yeah.
up. But I think at a very, very early stage, beyond these two, it is about the vision, which is the
Yes.
biggest currency.
True.
And if you believe in it, and if you cannot get 20 people to rally
Yeah.
around it, it doesn't work
So
out.
in our case, like when we started off, we were just about what, 5 of us. Lavneet, who's a co-founder,
Yeah.
myself, and then we had a lady who doubled up as a customer executive person to a biz dev person to actually managing the office when we were out trying to source
Yeah.
customers, and an office boy who was like jack of all trades. He was doing everything for us. Now, that customer service, and these were all people whom we had worked with in the previous organization,
So
or
they moved in because
they
there was
moved
a-
in with
yeah,
us.
yeah.
And they moved in with salaries which were half of what they were otherwise getting. But I think it was a belief that, like we will make something out of it, and they still continue to be in the organization.
Yeah.
So it's very important that everyone is wedded to that thought. But yes, ESOPs and all are a good way to make
Compensate
sure
for
that
the discount that they're
for
paying.
the
No, but I think it is initial days. I cannot agree with you more that if I don't get the team that believes in the idea,
Yeah.
I think it is never going to work out.
Never, ever.
Everyone will have certain monetary incentives aligned to it, but unless you truly believe that, look, this is what you
Yeah.
want to devote your life to, I think only the co-founders cannot take it to the end. The
Yeah.
co-founder, the founding team, the initial
Yeah.
members play a hugely important role in sort of ensuring where you are as of today
Yeah.
right now.
True.
So we'll take up, I think I'm coming to an end to questions around idea validation. Any question that we can pick up from the, yeah, I'll come to the second one very quickly. So there's a question by Piyush, let's just take that, which is in the industry where you are in also, there's a lot of competition
Yes.
that has come up,
Yeah.
right? I think in general, the trend has been in e-commerce or sort of in online businesses that first the product comes and the services come, and the services have now flooded the market.
Yeah.
Many of your competitors are very well funded.
Yes.
How do you compete against them? And many of your competitors have moved out of business as well.
Yes.
How do you guys compete with guys who are heavily funded? What are the challenges? What are the issues that you need to keep in mind in that situation?
Sure. Fundamentally, I think you need to be clear whether you are building the company to create value or to create a valuation.
Yeah. Fair point. Yeah.
Very
Fair point.
important. I think if you're in the game of creating valuation for yourself, you need to be really funded. To an extent where you want to be. Otherwise, normal course of business is all about managing within the resources that you have and making the best out of it.
Yeah.
We keep on telling Lavnish and I are not Gujaratis, but by birth. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, in terms of how we want to run our business, we are astute Gujaratis.
Yeah.
And I love a book called Dhanda. If you just
Yeah,
read
yeah,
that
yeah.
book, every Gujarati has an innate sense of making 10 out of that 1 rupee he has got, and he doesn't even think of spending before he has earned the 10 rupees.
Which is very different than the mindset that we have right now.
We have right now. And that is what is actually plaguing the system today, right? Ecosystem. Yeah. I think everyone started looking at the business in terms of GMV. All that are filtering away. People are getting into the fundamentals of what is the net.
Yeah.
Worth that you are creating or the value that you are creating.
Yeah.
I think that's a very clear differentiation that you need to start thinking about. Had we not thought about it, as I started off saying, we would not have been ROI positive in 2 out of the 6 categories that we are working on. We are not funded, but today we command a kind of a leadership, at least in those 2 categories, in whichever way that we could manage.
No, I think funding is a lot overrated
Yes,
in the ecosystem,
and
I
it's
think,
getting rationalized
and
now.
2016 is the year when it will get rationalized. Unless you build fundamentally strong
Yes.
businesses, it will not work out. Now, just on that same question, if I push you towards it, as you start scaling up, you always have that, look, I just need to do this really, really well, because if I don't do this really, really well, my competitor will sort of copy. What was that core value proposition you believe that, look, I need to do this extremely well in order to beat and stay ahead of all competitors in the market?
So if we were to talk about our services, particular to Timesaverz, if I have to look into it, we were very focused on customer service right from the beginning.
Customer service.
Because at the end of the day, it's a service, and you need to have happy customers, because that's the fundamental in this business. Product, it can still be okay not to do it while it is not advisable, but services you really can't. Like even at a small base, we were tracking NPS right from the beginning.
Yeah, which is the new buzzword.
So today, as a company, we are sitting at an NPS of 48. Not bad.
Which is very good.
Not
I think
bad.
Indian consumer products are at 0% NPS.
So if I look into it, I think Timesaverz as a company focused on that. But if we were to talk about generally, I think in terms of moving from a start to a scale, from one S to another, there are 3 things that are very critical. The first is basically the technology. I think today, if you're not a technology-enabled company, you don't have a future. Let's really be very clear about that. So whatever you need to do in terms of building the technology base to get to the next step, it's very important. The second is the team. Obviously, get the right people in.
Even when you sort of scaling up.
Don't compromise on that, because in a startup environment, you can't have bad working environment where you don't have the right set of people coming in. And the third, prepare for the transition. I think that's something that very few companies do well. When you move to A to B, there's a lot of transition that happens that you need to take care of. And these are the 3 things that you need to definitely.
And I'll come to that sort of question on automation and technology and how this sort of happens.
Sure.
There's a question with Mr. Ene Himani. What is NPS?
Net Promoter Score. It is basically the opportunity that your company has in terms of being talked about positively by consumers, so that others get to get your company.
So I'll quickly sort of answer that question, which is, you take a score of 1 to 10 and you ask a consumer, how likely are you to recommend your company to anyone else, your friends, family? You take the sum of 9 and 10, you subtract it from 1 to 6, and that's the score that you talk about. And I think it's a very, very important step, because it not only talks about an average number as to who are talking fairly good about you, but it subtracts the one who are talking bad about you, because that's the net promoter that exists in the market, who will always be there to sort of talk about you at the end of the day. So moving on to the question that you sort of raised, which is a question that Amit Bhatta has asked. How important is, like, this process management becomes very difficult when you start scaling up. What systems and tools, automation that sort of you brought in that a potential entrepreneur can learn about for their own sort of venture idea as well?
So we made our mistakes. Let me accept it. We started as a tech-enabled home services company without having an in-house technology team.
You do not have a in-house technology team, which would be a question that I'll come back to you also.
Which was, if we were to sit down and count out what are the mistakes that we did in the entrepreneurship journey, I think that is the biggest that we did. For close to about, like 8 to 9 months, it was all outsourced.
Because you and Lavani both are not from technology background.
And we thought it can be outsourced. And we can build things over that. Now, the difference that we saw when we were outsourcing versus getting everything in-house was tremendous.
No, it's absolutely.
So I think that's very key in terms of getting the technology piece right, because with technology comes in a lot of processes, right? you can write a rule for everything that you want to track. You can write a rule for everything that you need to be in
Aware
terms
of,
of
yeah.
everything. I think, like for example, getting an Exotel integrated to make sure that all your customer calls are integrated.
Yeah.
Um,
Just on that, Exotel is a company that provides SaaS-based customer support service platform
yeah.
that you guys can sort of look at. That's one tool for you, Amit.
Yeah. So moving from that to actually a lot of, like for example, our MIs, though we have built in house, there are tools in the market that can help you in terms of
Automate that, yeah.
creating that MI system. But we thought it's very inherent for us as a business, so we wanted to
Yeah,
build it
fair.
heads up. So those are kind of things that you really need to start thinking of right from the beginning.
And that's
just helps.
I think as an entrepreneur, as you start scaling up, there are a lot of things that you start getting away
Yeah.
from. You, in the initial time, I would believe that you would have sat on the other side of the phone doing
Yes,
customer
yes,
service.
of course, yes.
As you scale up, you
Yeah.
cannot sit for all the calls, but at least you need to have a visibility as to what's
Exactly.
happening there, what number of minutes of time that the person
Yeah.
is spending, average, declining, increasing, and the efficiency of that.
Mhm.
And I think those automation processes, either using a fresh desk or a Exotel or a Avaya calling
Yeah.
system, helps you sort of do that in a much more meaningful manner. But in the initial days, I believe Excel plays a very, very important
Of
part
course,
of as
yes.
a tool,
Yeah.
just to sort of monitor and measure what's happening
Yeah.
on the platform itself.
We were all on Google Sheets for a
Yeah.
considerably long time
I
before
think
we
we
start
still
building
are on
good-
Google Sheets.
Yeah.
All our sort of numbers come on
Yeah.
Google Sheet. I think you can add a lot of value because you spoke of Dhanda as well. There's a question by Surya who mentioned low budget and scale.
Yeah.
And I think this is important, specifically given the context as to what the Indian startup ecosystem is going through.
Yeah.
With low budget and scale, there's one school of thought that, look, I cannot scale with low budget. There's another school of thought which says that if you're at low budget, you will come up with innovative ways to
Yes.
scaling up.
Yeah.
What do you subscribe to and what you
The second one.
Yeah.
And we have experienced it
No, no,
ourselves.
agree.
So when Unilaser funding came in August of 2015.
This is last
yeah,
year, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we went berserk.
You're very
For the-
happy and you're so
Yeah, yeah. So
You knew.
it was the whole thing about you have so much money in the bank, just to go across and
Yeah.
do stuff. For 2 months together, we were very high in terms of spends, doing all kind of things that can be done with the money. But after 2 months, we realized that where we are spending money is not the channel that is actually bringing back customers to
Which
us.
was, I could imagine one of those channels, but we'll not talk about that channel. But yeah,
So which was the activations channel for
Yeah.
us at least.
yeah,
And this was innovative, right? When others were spending everywhere else, we just took the hard way out, but maybe a little more closer to the customer, being there at their doorstep,
which is in the
talking about
community center or
Yes.
the house, cooperative
Yeah.
societies, etc.
So it's not always money that builds business. At the end of the day, you need to be closer to your customer, understand the pain point, and solve for him. If you're
Yeah.
able to do that, and for that, you don't need lots of money. What you need is for a team to sit down and think through as to what they can do with the consumers at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in a lot of places those innovation can come in. I think marketing is a very interesting way that
Yeah.
one can innovate upon. And I think even as a team that comes up at
Yeah.
low budget, things that you would do that you would not do otherwise.
Yes.
I think the biggest advantage of money is that it brings in that sort of aspect to scaling up, and you can do things that you would not have thought of.
Yeah.
But I also believe that it does to some extent some amount of indiscipline
And wastage.
and wastage, which otherwise you would
Yeah.
not have done.
Yeah.
So there's both sort of pros and cons of funding, which a lot of people
Sure.
do not really appreciate in that thought process.
And overfunding is never the good thing to have.
And overfunding is never the best thing to do
Yeah.
that. I mean, I completely agree to that point. There was a question that we had on technology, which I think you can probably answer that. Technology and development, should a founder be a great programmer or possess strong technical knowledge, as affording a good programmer might cost him too
Not
much?
necessarily the founder need not be, but then the founder needs to have a team member, a co-founder, and anybody
Core
and a
team
senior
member, yeah.
core team member who needs to be. If you are a technology,
Provided technology is a core
You
part
should.
of what your
Yeah.
solution is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think you need not be a great programmer per
Yeah.
se, but I think you need to appreciate technology.
Yes, and you need to know what the technology can do for your business.
Yep.
And then you need to have team members who can execute it. I think that just about makes
and I think
it
a lot of folks that come to our platform, they come from a non-technology background. So I think a lot of people believe that it can be outsourced. And I think initial thought process is always that.
I would never recommend after going through what we have gone through.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a technology-enabled company, if you're a technology-focused company, then technology is core part of your DNA.
Yes.
And your thought process has to be around it.
Yeah.
I was doing a very, we have technology and services at UpGrad. We have a very clear definition that, look, technology has to make services obsolete, and services has to go to a level where technology cannot even touch them. And I think that's the game that we have internally, that we want to sort of make sure whatever that things that we need not do, because technology can do it for us. But for that, I needed a team that thinks in that manner, because those are the people who can actually start thinking of scalable ideas and opportunities to sort of take your venture to scale. So guys, those were all the questions that we had on scaling up. Those are tactical questions. On specifics related to tools, we can get back to you individually. Next comes is funding. Is it overrated? Is it underrated? What's happening with funding right now? What are you seeing as an entrepreneur outside? If you have your friends, family who are looking at raising funds right now, what advice would you give them in 2016?
I think we touched upon it during the conversation. It's getting more rationalized. So you need to have a fundamental business idea in place, or some fundamentals of business being in place for you to get funded today. It's not easy to get funding anymore.
It is not easy to get funded anymore. But I think it's important the flip side is that it's important to build a fundamentally sound business.
Yes.
There was an interesting thought that someone was telling me that I'm gross contribution margin positive. And I thought that gross contribution margin should always be positive, because it doesn't make any sense, because a negative gross margin did not make any sense to me. But I think things are coming to that rationality. But in that thought process, you bootstrap for a fairly long time. When and how did you start thinking of funding? This was a question from Piyush Kedia, who wanted to understand as to what should be my benchmark to figure out that now is my time to go for pre-Series A, seed level funding, or Series A or Series B funding, etc.
Yeah, so it's all a question about what is that money going to do for you? So is that money going to actually help you expand into geographies? Is that money going to help you in getting your marketing to an extent where you start scaling up in terms of customer acquisition? So I think those are the fundamental questions that they need to why you require the money. Apart from why you require the money, I think it's very important to find out where is it that you're getting that money from.
And why is that important?
That's very important, because it's very important to have the founders, the team, and the investors on the same page in terms of the vision. Not necessarily that the person who is funding you will have the same vision as you. So it's very important that you are,
at least you respect the person's views and etc. Now, I just probably put another question there, which is, what do you look from an investor also?
Apart from the money part of it, at least for us, if I were to look into it, I think different people have different standards of looking into. In our case, we really wanted someone who can actually give some strategic inputs into the business. I always fundamentally believe that the investors actually find you out and seek you out than the other way around.
Agreed.
While we always get into this mode of pitching and all those things, invariably it's the investors who discover you out. So wait for that moment.
And just on that question, I'll also add that when you are at a very early stage of pre-series A or sort of seed stage or angel stage, I think people look at a lot about the team, followed by the idea and followed by the opportunity. And look, all three of them should work out well. If I have a good team, they will figure out the idea. But they need to work on a market which is big enough, right? When you come to Series A, the traction and the minimal viable product becomes very, very critical. That, look, am I generating some revenue, some traction? Is my minimal viable product there in the market to get it or not? When it comes to Series B, C, D, or so, let's say Series B, it becomes a lot about product market fit. That now it's working and I can just scale very quickly from there on. And that's where CDE becomes a lot about scaling up. And I always say that, look, when it comes to IPO, it's about predictability.
Yeah.
That at that time, you know that business will work in autopilot, which it never does.
Yeah.
But that's the thought
Yeah.
process, Piyush, to your question, that it is about getting the team in place, the idea and the opportunity, followed by an MVP, followed by product market fit,
Yeah.
followed by scaling up, and then predictability over a period of time. Um, you mentioned a lot about understanding the market. When it comes to pitching to a particular investor, how important it is for you to be on top of the market competition, what others are doing, what's happening globally. Is this just a good to have, or it's a very
It's a
important
must
thing?
to have.
Yeah,
Right, that so whoever is investing in you is actually putting in a money with the conviction that it will give him returns, right, at some
yeah,
point in time. And if it is like a team which really doesn't know what is the market all about and what is it that they are going to create in that space, I don't think any investor would be actually convinced about
yeah.
investing in that company. And let's also not forget that, like, the investors also do their groundwork.
And they will
It's
also
not that you are the only one getting onto the table with the statistics. They also have
they don't
lot
understand of the
of
market.
understanding about the market. So it's definitely, because if we were to look into it, whether it is a C stage or a series A, it's again at that stage that there is an idea, some of it has been validated,
Yeah,
and it can go on to the next stage.
yeah,
So what do you have at that point in time? Apart from an understanding as to how big it can grow,
correct.
what are the benchmarks for it and what are the use cases for it?
Yeah.
If you're not on top of that, it becomes a little
And
difficult.
actually, it becomes challenging that if you're sitting in front of an investor who are also very well versed, because
Yeah.
they would have met with 15, 20, 30
Yes.
companies, you don't want to come across in front of them as less
Not
prepared,
informed.
not
Yeah.
informed. And I think that time it is important for you to be on top of what's happening in the
Yes.
market. Not that you will try to replicate what your competitors are doing, but
Yeah.
it is good for you to know where they stand and what
Sure.
they're doing right now in the market. There's a question by Shrikant Attal who said, he doesn't have any contact with any investors or anyone close to an investor. How should he reach out to investor? Just a tactical advice. What did you guys do? How did you guys approach investors? Was it more a cold call? Was it through someone that you got connected to?
Yeah, it is always through networking.
Through networking.
I think if you don't know, you need to find out someone who knows.
Yeah.
In our case, when we started off, as I said, we were the first in this space. So it just started with our previous bosses having that belief in us and putting in the initial seed amount.
So initial employers, the
Yeah.
bosses are putting the money there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they got us connected with people
Yeah.
around, and that's how we just landed.
So there's a
With
question now very specific to your business from one of our older student called Amit Kishore Puria. He has a question for you, which is how do you tackle the issue, and this is a very business model related question. How do you tackle the issue of leakage bypassing on the service platform like yours? That you connected the two of them, the handyman now next time connects directly with those individuals. Because that's a fundamental business problem in any of these service related business.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that? What are the thoughts around sort of, is it something you should be worried about? Is it
So
part of-
we are worried about it, but not overtly worried. I think we still believe that there is at least 5 to 7% of leakage that happens in the system.
It does happen.
It does happen no
Yeah.
matter what you do.
Yeah.
But then you cannot be losing your sleep over the 5 to 7% and not be actually going after the 93
Yeah.
or 97% that you can concentrate on. So I think
You have to accept that
you just
something
have
will
to
happen.
accept it. But at the same time, you need to build in either penalties or I would say blockages that can actually encourage that.
Yeah.
In our case, how we have built it is basically the rating systems
Which is for individual guy, which is
for individual
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Because we are a horizontal player and with multiple services that are key to the business, people still keep coming back to us.
Yeah.
I think penalties and blockages are the
So the
ways that
sticks
you
and
can
carrots,
do
you
it.
have to sort of
Yeah,
build it together.
Exactly.
The entire thing. Now, when you guys went into this business, services was a new thing. And now also services now coming up a lot more.
Yeah.
But if you have a niche product, a niche technology, this is a question from Akshay
Yeah.
Bharganwar. How should you be thinking about approaching an investor? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's a concept sell at at some point in time itself.
Yeah, so if it's a niche product, fundamentally boils down to the, even if it is a niche product, does it have a business viability? You know,
Yeah.
like it can be a product with 400 rupees average work order, but millions in terms of the
Users,
users,
yeah.
or it can be a product with a 10,000 rupees average work order with just about 10,000 people using it.
Yeah.
I don't think investors are actually weighing one over another. I don't think they do that. At the end of it, it should make business sense.
Yeah.
As long as it does that, and not necessarily high profile, it's more about, is that team geared enough to take it to the next level and beyond.
Yeah.
So
I think just to add to that point, what Debadutta is saying, that a lot of investors are open to looking at newer ideas,
Yeah.
but I think the fundamental thing is, it should solve a real pain point.
Yes,
And that pain point
yeah.
should exist. You cannot create a futuristic technology which may not be solving a real pain point. And I think the second point that we said was, does that pain point lead to monetization
Yes.
and scalability?
Yeah.
And the third one is, if even if that pain point leads to monetization and scalability, can you differentiate significantly in the long run?
Yeah.
Is this differentiation going to come from customer service or technology or sort of data or something of that sort?
Sure.
That becomes a very, very strong sort of way of looking at any new technology
Yeah.
at that point in time. So there's a question from Rupesh Patel, which is around best practices of team building and hiring. What were your thoughts initially when you were hiring at the early stage?
Yeah. So we were clear that we'll not overhire. We will right hire. And the second part was that, like, you need to give people the liberty and the authority to actually
Take a call or
Take a
decisions.
call, yeah.
Ownership is important.
Yeah, that's very important, because in a startup environment, a lot many people come after leaving their jobs,
Yeah.
right? Very highly educated, well-cushioned jobs. So they've come here to create a difference. You need to give them that playing field.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen. As a leader, you need to be able to own up for the mistakes as much as you need to own up for the successes that come out of it.
Culture of experimentation, culture of
Yes.
failure has to be
I
built
think
in.
that's very important in
Yeah.
terms of the team building part of it.
Can you time hiring? You said that hire right, but just sort of going back to probably Rupesh would be thinking that, look, I need to build a business.
Yeah.
I don't need any head of sales right now, but मुझे पता है 6 months from now I'll need a head of sales, and he will start looking for head of sales on the 5th month,
Yeah.
and whatever that you plan, that thing will cross the timeline, because I have
Sure.
put some timelines for hiring, and I've missed all deadlines. I know that I wanted to hire at this point in time. I've not gotten the right person. I moved on.
Sure.
Do you think one can time hiring, or just what's should be the thought process?
To
Should
some
you-
extent, yes, Mayank. And it on an average, if you have to look into, so it depends on what level you are hiring, right? If it is like a junior level, easily available. If it
Yeah.
is a mid level, you can give or take a 1.5 months, 45 days kind
Pre-hire
of a
or post,
thing.
yeah.
But if you're looking at a senior level, it's at least a 3 months kind of a window that you need to look into it. That's what you need to plan for.
Yeah, yeah. I think another very interesting thing on best practice of hiring that we look for is, there are many roles, and every individual comes with very sort of specific strengths and weaknesses. For us, it becomes very important to just focus on strengths. I think if I can get that one strength
Yeah.
for which I'm hiring him or her, rather than looking at multiple weaknesses that they may have.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when it comes to hiring in a larger team, 4 people take a call.
Yeah.
And when you sit in a room, they all talk about, Acha, iska sales is good, but I don't think so that he was communicating that well.
Yeah.
And when you're looking for a sales role, at least hire for that core strength and not lack for any weaknesses.
Yeah, I would like to differ a little bit on this,
Yeah.
Mayank, because I don't have anything apart from talking from experience, and we have found out that a multitasker in a team up with limited resources,
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
very important to have not everyone can come across with a multi-skill talent,
Yeah.
multi-skill ability, but then like invariably you try to find out, it's not that I'm good only in one thing.
No,
You
agreed,
always try to find out as
Yeah.
to what is it that other person
Yeah, what I was trying to refer to is, I think it's something that I read someplace, that hire for strengths and not for lack of any weaknesses.
Yes, and hire for attitude more than aptitude.
Skills,
I think if you have the right attitude and everything else falls in place.
We'll just take a few more questions. There's a question
Sure.
from Mr. A. Kumar, which Mrs. A. Kumar, is there a measure of critical consumer base that one needs to attain before seeking viable funding?
No, not really. I think it's not about the consumer base. It is about whatever that minimum viable product brings out in terms of...
in different stages, the things will be very different.
Yeah, true.
So I think if you're looking at, Kumar, if you're looking at very early stage hiring, as Debadutta is saying, it's about the minimum viable product or market fit. If you go to Series A, Series B hiring, when the traction becomes important, people look for user scale and how many people are using that. I think that time
repeats, referrals, and all those things then actually come into the picture.
And that time the entire sort of tactical thing comes into the picture. So I think we are coming close to the entire program. There's a question so there's a question from Piyush Kids. What level of guidance can we expect from UpGrad? Okay, so this is an UpGrad specific question. So the question reads as, what level of guidance can we expect from UpGrad program in starting up a venture apart from theoretical sessions and case studies? I think part of having you on the platform was to talk about real life experiences that students can take back. So I think our focus at UpGrad is less about giving you with theoretical concepts and frameworks because that's not going to solve the purpose for which you are joining an entrepreneurship program. It's a 15-week entrepreneurship bootcamp in which we ensure that we not only provide you with the right kind of framework, but at the same time give you experiences from entrepreneurs who have gone through the journey. And that's part of what we sort of bring onto the platform. There's a team that provides you with real-time B-plan tracker feedback. So there's a team that sits here that will go through all the B-plan questions.
That's very critical, right?
And that's the one who can probably give them real-time feedback through the live sessions. We organize a lot of mentoring sessions. So Ronnie, me, some of the founders sort of come and take up those mentoring sessions also. And I think in mentoring, it's very important for us to point out that if you need answers to any question, there is Google. You can get answers to any question that you want to. But come to that mentoring session more from getting more questions for yourself. And if you can come with 5 questions and go back with 15 questions, I think your job is done in that mentoring session. That's what we aim to do on the mentorship platform. And then we organize a pitch day for students. At the end of the program, once you build the MVP, get a set of jury of investors to pitch in front of them. I think those are the hand-holding thing that we do beyond just providing the theoretical framework. I think the theoretical framework would account for less than 10% of the program. It is about experience, and I think similar to what you guys are doing when it comes to education, it is less about product, it is about the experience. You don't come to buy 15 hours of content, but you come to buy an overall experience, which a single pointed agenda to sort of provide you with clarity of thought. So guys, with that, I think we are good to close the session. Thank you very much for attending the session, and thank you, Debadutta, for having us here. We're going to sort of can this and put it up on the program so that a lot of students can learn from what you just said on the platform itself. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.